Hey everybody, it's Michael Mann from Michael Mann Security Services. Today I want to talk to you guys about preventive security, or using the Israeli security concept at your house of worship. Now I want to talk about this specifically today for three reasons. Number one, it's almost Christmas. So we're coming up on Christmas. If you serve on a church security team, or you manage a church security team, or you happen to be in charge of a church security team because you're in leadership at your church, you're a teaching pastor, an administrative pastor, or just an administrative manager, here pretty soon at your church, you're going to see a lot of people that you don't know. They're going to be visitors. They're not going to know where to go. And you might see some things that look suspicious. So that's the first reason we're going to talk about it. Second, it's a great segue into the video that we just put out 5 days ago on physical security design for your specific house of worship. So we're talking about concentric rings of protection, the 4 functions of an effective physical protection system, and of course, conflict avoidance. The Israeli security concept plugs into that, or preventive security. And then the last reason where I really want to talk about this with you guys and ladies is when I start to look at the church security Facebook pages and emails that we're receiving at michaelmannsecurityservices.com, there's a lot of talk and a lot of energy around response. And if you paid attention to the video last week on physical security design, response is a function of physical security. However, our job as physical security team members, or church security team members, or just anybody in general in the security business, our job is about prevention, not response. That's our motto here. And so your training should be initially for your security teams should be focused on prevention, not response. Stop the bleed classes, gun classes, what firearms qualification program that your team is using. That's really fun, cool stuff, but that's got to do with response. And what that means is the threat's already gotten inside the facility and you're having to respond. So prevention, and so what we're talking about today, preventive security, should really be your primary focus. So let's get to it real quick. Why am I talking about this? How am I qualified to? So back in 2011, I had the opportunity to go to Israel and study this very specifically, learn how to do it. Among other things, I was able to go to Ben Gurion Airport there in Tel Aviv. This is where they really, that in El Airlines, this is where they really use that concept. So I was able to study that in 2011. And then I've had the chance to go back and study it at other firms since then. And I worked in Israel off and on for about 2 years for a large company. So I've got to see this in action, learn how to do it, see how they deploy it. So it's really a cool concept, and it fits in with the American side, or the this concept of concentric rings. Again, those 4 functions we talked about last week, and of course, conflict avoidance. So let's get into it. What is this? What is the Israeli concept of physical security, or security? So number one, you must understand who or what is threatening your facility. Now, we're talking about intentional threats, the human threats, those people that want to come in, or persons that want to come in and do harm to the people that you're trying to protect. So we're talking about intentional threats specifically. That could be the active shooter. It could be a terrorist. It could be a sexual predator. Now, the likelihood of those events, very specifically active shooters, are very, very low. We've talked about that in the past, but understand that risk still exists. So number one, we need to understand our threat, their capabilities, why it is that they want to attack your facility, and really what that looks like. And so to understand that threat, if you don't know how to do that, send us an email at ScottM, SCOTTM, at michaelmannsecurityservices.com, and we will send you a small, abbreviated threat assessment process to help you understand who your threats are. So number one, you need to understand the threat. The second element in the Israeli security concept, or just preventive security concepts, is that I must understand and target the process that the adversary is going through. So what that means is every adversary is going to go through a pre-attack and an attack cycle. So your security team members need to understand what that cycle looks like. Depending on what school you've gone to or what training that you receive, some elements in that cycle might be called out or named something different, but they're exactly all the same. And the third step in that process is going to be not only to understand what that process looks like, but be able to, out of that process, identify what elements are going to be detectable to the security team. Very specifically, things like, what does surveillance look like? If someone's trying to probe my site to see how easy it is to get inside undetected, or to see what our physical security measures are, what does that look like? So what are the elements in that process that are very, very detectable? And again, this starts in the beginning like what we talked about last week. This starts with the concentric rings. This starts with your security team being out in that parking lot, in that outer ring, looking to see or identify that very, very specific detectable element of that process. And then, of course, this gets into the functions of physical security, or the functions of effective physical protection system, which, of course, is deterrence, detection, delay, and then, of course, response, which is our last element always. That's where we're talking about the stop the bleed, the shooting, the Krav Maga, those things that are required to neutralize that threat if they've gotten inside your building. And, of course, conflict avoidance. The cool thing about the Israeli security concept is that it convinces or deters the bad guy. So it's telling the bad guy to go to another target, because we're not a soft target. But at the same time, as we go through this process, we're not going to offend, or we're not going to upset the good guy. And then, of course, that last process that we did not cover, once we find those detectable elements, and this gets into not offending the good guy and chasing the bad guy away, is that security interview process. And so once we identify those detectable events, we think we see one of those detectable events, then we go up and we go through a questioning process to determine whether or not this is an adversary, or this is just somebody that doesn't know where they're at, and some of the activity or some of the behavior that they're actually producing is 100% good to go. It's not adversary activity. It's just it just looks suspicious, and we validate or we refute that. So just very quickly, that is the Israeli security concept. This is not a video to teach you how to do it. These are just the 3 to 4 elements that are involved in that, and how that fits into that physical security design process that we talked about last week. If you have any questions, again, please email us, Scott M, SCOTTM, at michaelmannsecurityservices.com. Again, if you don't know how to identify your threats, so if you don't know how to do or conduct a basic threat analysis or threat assessment process, please email us and we will send you that process for free. And remember, it's about prevention, not response.